Born a rebel, I was never built to conform. Even if I tried to fit in with the masses this lifetime, I wouldn't be able to, which is why I really should have known that persisting with a good old government job in Canberra wasn't going to be a great idea. And at some point, I was going to have to source the courage to live in alignment with my soul's truth, even when my geographical collective preferred conformity. Because God forbid a person should step out of line or refuse to fall in with the other players in the parliamentary triangle. But unlike being taken out by a rifle holding, faceless man dressed in a fluoro pink bodysuit, my takedown was far more civilized. Though I was blasted across the Canberra Times, the shade sent my way wasn't crimson blood, but pink flushed embarrassment. Or at least that was the intention of the trolls who crawled out from behind their keyboards with their uninvited opinions about me and my life choices. Working in the public service in Canberra was never part of my grand plan, I'll admit. Everybody seems to say that working for government is the dream because of the excellent pay and the great working conditions and job security. And sure, those are bloody good reasons to dedicate your life to climbing the government ladder, but not for me. Working somewhere I couldn't fully be myself or having to operate inside a rigid bureaucracy because the rules say so simply didn't match my idea of what life should look like. And while a lot of people, including my own family, didn't agree with me, I've always taken a more Neville Goddard approach to life. We create the reality we want with our mind, and the outer world simply has no choice but to eventually catch up with us. To describe it as a painful experience would be putting it mildly. I was never happy working there. Sure, some of the folks were nice and I made a few good friendships, but give me any excuse and I wouldn't turn up. It was like my body purposefully got sick so I wouldn't have to set foot in the door. It was brain numbingly boring for my neurodivergent mind, and I never felt like I was making any significant contribution to the greater good. The work politics and low vibe environment were bloody hard for me. People seemed more interested in taking down genuinely good hearted co workers for their own advancements or sleeping with management just to push their own agendas. Puke. And no matter how hard I tried or what I gave, I was always met with not enoughness. Like if I just did more tasks or offered to be on more projects, maybe I'd finally be deemed worthy of being considered officially part of the team. Once I was doing my job, the job of a teammate who'd suddenly left, and the job of her boss. There was no thanks, no good work, not even an acknowledgement for keeping the wheels turning. Management failed to see that giving all of me was simply depleting. I was never going to be enough for them. Eventually, I had to adopt the mantra: go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. During my time in one job back in the day, life was getting tricky. I had two small kids. My youngest was suffering from chronic bronchitis at that time and was constantly unwell. And being sick had become his norm. And mine was being the sleep deprived mother who was continually rushing and trying her hardest to win at single parenting and keeping the kids alive and well. School drop offs, childcare timeframes, all while trying to make it work before 9 a.m., only to repeat the same chaos at 5 p.m., battling city traffic and racing to childcare before 6 to avoid late fees. Not to mention, at that time, I was undiagnosed with majority of my conditions, and physically I was struggling. There seemed to be no respite in sight. Monday to Friday was a week-long episode of The Amazing Race, except there was nothing amazing about it. Just endless pressure stacked on top of the daily grind of surviving. Joyous dinner times, usually eaten straight off the floor by my then 2-year-old. Bath time turned into a tsunami reenactment, and bedtime protests that ended with me sandwiched between both kids by 10 p.m., passing out from sheer exhaustion. Then came the 3-hourly wake ups, requests for water, more space, fewer covers, then more covers again because it was too cold. Disclaimer: parenting has never been my forte. I try fucking hard though. And spoiler alert, that toddler is 10 now, and I still struggle. Full-time office work wasn't working out for me. The stress was too high, and the payoff didn't come close to outweighing the impending mental breakdown I could feel brewing. I'd always known the public service wasn't for me, but I'd also carried a ton of resistance and self-acceptance issues, being okay with who I am, an oracle, clairvoyant, creative storyteller, someone who was always meant to take the path less traveled, unlike the 75% of Canberra who work for government. Then one day, out of the blue, an unexpected message landed in my inbox, one that left me excited as hell and also shaking in my winter boots. I'd been offered a feature in the Canberra Times for their Canberra Life section. Incredibly grateful for the opportunity, I humbly accepted the offer to share my story about how it was that I had awakened to my abilities as an oracle in exchange for an interview about my so-called radical career change. By then, I'd already decided it was time to give more of my energy to life as an oracle and mum, and to finally walk away from the grind. Some might say swapping meetings for mediumship is no biggie, but for me, the change was harder than turning a skeptic into a believer. The article went live, and what followed was an unexpected mix of exhilaration and confrontation as it went viral. The comments on the Facebook page were spirit lifting, hundreds of kind souls reached out, people saying good on you for following your heart, some wanting readings, others saying they wish they had the courage to leave their 9 to 5 to pursue their heart's desires too. Those messages lit me up. My heart was happy, without question, that I had made the right decision. But awesomeness wasn't all that came. I was also slammed, shut down, called a con artist, an idiot. The insults came in thick and fast. The judgment was crushing. The cutting words laced with mega bad mojo would have been enough to send the average person into the fetal position, crying in a corner, because the trolls became a mirror for the collective's unhealed fear of difference. But lucky for me, I'm not the average person. I've weathered my fair share of shitstorms, and it was going to take far more than some beige triggered trolls to knock me off my feet. The public humiliation dissolved my need for validation and awakened inner sovereignty, if I'm honest. Still, it made me wonder, why do people tear each other down? Surely the world is big enough for everyone to contribute in their own way, big or small. Maybe the haters didn't stop to consider that the person behind the article was a mother, a daughter, sister, girlfriend, and most importantly, a human. Back the fuck up, trolls. I get the whole free speech thing, but there comes a point where it stops being opinion and it starts becoming emotional dumping, a projection of others' triggers and baggage onto someone just trying to live in their truth. I took up the invite to extend love and compassion in response to the hate, because it's an act of spiritual mastery when we transmute polarity into unity. Despite advice from a family member to stay out of the comments section, I read them anyway. I laughed a bit, cringed a bit, but mostly I felt sad, not for me, but for them, the trolls, for how disconnected we've become as a collective from compassion and kindness, because external conflict is often an invitation for collective and internal healing, like mirror work for humanity. It made me realize we don't need to have the same beliefs, lifestyles, or ways of thinking. Diversity is what makes the world rich. Hate, though, is never acceptable. And when you feel a strong pull to crush someone else, the spotlight really needs to turn inward ASAP. As I always say, our outer world is merely a reflection of what's happening within. To be clear, I'm grateful for every day for the time that I spent in the public service. It helped me through the births of my both of my children. It supported a lifestyle I enjoyed, traveled, comfort, a sense of stability. But eventually it no longer felt in integrity to stay in something that brought me more dissatisfaction than fulfillment. So I made the choice. I put my kids first and myself. I took my heart's advice and stopped leaking energy into something that was no longer a good fit. I knew I wasn't a fraud or a con artist, and I didn't need to prove it to anyone. But the thing is, every time we choose love over fear, expansion over contraction, understanding over judgment, we move the collective forward. Truth is, I've never been one to preach to others on how they should live, only to remind people that we're all capable of compassion, kindness, and love if we choose it. Back then, I was in my happy bubble, and I still am. I'm blessed to have an incredible team of spirit guides and angels watching over me and to be surrounded by people who love me and fiercely protect me with their shield of love. I wish the same for every disgruntled Canberra Times reader that took to the comments section that day. I had every intention of launching fully into my heart's calling as an oracle back then. But as many undiagnosed conditions worsened and the kids were still small, I couldn't build my business with any real momentum. So after COVID, fear crept in. The old need to appease and fit in resurfaced, and I found myself back in the public service for another round. It was gentler this time. I was more self aware, but I was still out of alignment, and my body let me know it. It quickly became apparent that it was yet again another test. The stress made me sick. My disabilities flared big time. I was again undervalued and underappreciated. And when I asked for fair pay and recognition, no one was willing to see my worth, no matter how hard I was trying, no matter how much extra I was being. So I left again. In unpacking this lesson, I understood a few important things. The first leap, leaving the public service to pursue life as a fully pledged oracle, was kind of my initiation into authenticity. It was my soul saying yes to purpose through joy. The second round wasn't failure, it was refinement, a test of integration, if you will. The universe was asking me, do you trust your truth enough to live it in every context, even when safety tempts you back? The misalignment manifested physically. Illness became worse. Exhaustion was just intolerable. Emotional depletion felt never ending. When energy contracts to fit an old mold, the body becomes the truth teller. Alignment isn't a one time decision, it's a constant recalibration. And every time you deny your worth, your body keeps the score. Spiritually, returning wasn't regression, it was evidence of growth. I had to revisit the scene of my previous lesson with new awareness. witness the same pattern, and make a different choice consciously. And when you no longer need validation and you finally accept your own value, I saw leaving wasn't failure, it was fidelity to my soul. The real story was never just about leaving a workplace that didn't fit. It was about learning to stop outsourcing my worth to structures that could never mirror it. And that is authentic alignment in its most embodied form. It's not about rebellion, it's about reverence. Reverence for the self who can't thrive in what feels like cage, no matter how well paid or socially accepted that may appear.